Welcome back, Brooklyn Nets fans. We are now 4 games into this 2021/2022 season already. The Nets are 2-2, probably not the start we had hoped for or envisioned. It's not the biggest shocker, though. I will say, I wasn't feeling great about opening night. I wasn't even feeling that great about the Sixers game. Now, thank God I had that 16-1 run to close out that game and steal that one in Philly, because honestly, the Sixers were probably the better team in that game, if you guys know which one I'm talking about. So the Nets were able to steal that one. They win last night against the Wizards, then they lose on Sunday in their home opener. By the way, why have a home opener on Sunday at 4 p.m.? Who's going to that game? I feel like half the arena was empty. I know the Nets don't have the most fans as it is, but a home opener on a Sunday at 4, I don't know who's going to that. So that was kind of puzzling to me. But yeah, I mean, they lost their home opener to the Hornets. Wasn't really the best showing, honestly. They were hanging close all game. They had a 10-point lead in the second quarter, but then the Hornets and Ish Smith, of all people, went on this big run to close out that game, and Miles Bridges had the big game, of course. So anyway, let's talk about some of what's going on with the Nets here. Some of the notes. Once again, they are 2-2 here. Now, James Harden versus the refs. Now, before we get into the refs, we'll talk about James Harden and his conditioning so far and what he looks like, because the meme when he came over last year was that he was fat, and people were saying that when he was on Houston to end his Rockets career, he was not looking like he was in the best shape. He, of course, wasn't really showing up in the training camp or whatever, and he showed up very much out of shape, and he was showing at strip clubs and whatnot. Wasn't really taking his career seriously, it seemed like. And part of that was to get out of Houston and work his way, get a trade and force his way out of Houston, which he did. And then he came to the Nets and all of a sudden didn't look as fat or something. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, but now Harden comes back once again off the hamstring issue, which was the issue last year and why he was not 100% in that Bucks series. And there were questions about, is he still explosive as is he as explosive as he used to be? And Harden's had, I think, 2 games where he's looked pretty good and 2 where he's looked not himself. And it's been the first game, I feel like he looked, I think he looked pretty good in that game. No, the first game he did not look that good. Game 2 against the Sixers, he looked like himself. Then game 3 against the Hornets did not look like himself. And then last night it started to look more like himself. And Steve Nash and James Harden kind of addressed the whole officiating thing, because as we know, the NBA is kind of trying to shy away from those ticky-tack calls and the calls where the offensive player is clearly trying to get a foul and not making basketball moves, kind of like what Trae Young and James Harden like to do. Harden, of course, is the type of guy that likes to throw his hands up into a guy's arms and get fouls that way. Trae Young, of course, likes to stop short, have a guy hit him in the back, and then, get an extra 2 shots out of that. So there's different ways these guys try to get foul calls, and the NBA is trying to step away from that. So James Harden, I guess, so far is having an adjusting period to the new current NBA and the way they're calling games. Because if you think about it, James Harden for the last decade in Houston, even OKC, has benefited greatly from officiating. I think, James Harden is now at a point where he's mastered what refs are going to call for fouls. As I just said, he finds a way to get, say I'm James Harden, right? I have the ball here. I'm about to go up for a layup. He throws his arms into a guy's arms just to get a foul call. That's what he does. And James Harden's been very good at that for a long time. And that's kind of how he's been making his living. Now, the past, decade or so, he's had so many free throw attempts. And the first 4 games of this year, he's barely going to the free throw line. So it's a bit concerning that maybe the refs won't give him the same calls as they used to. But James Harden, from a scoring standpoint, is still one of the most talented players in the league. And I'm not too concerned. I know Harden's now 32 or 33. You start thinking about the miles on his legs and coming off the injury last year. But I'm not at a point where I am concerned yet. Now, I think Harden at some points this year has made some poor decisions. He definitely has forced the ball to Nick Claxton on alley-oops way too much. We've seen a lot of that. And a lot of lazy-looking passes from James Harden. Now, sometimes they work out and they're beautiful passes, but Harden, for the first time yesterday, I think, looked very comfortable in passing the ball. Had a couple nice passes to Bruce Brown, who, by the way, should be starting the rest of the year. I don't know why he was on the bench. We'll get to that in a little bit. But, James Harden was looking more like his old self yesterday's game against the Wizards. And that's definitely a good sign, but I'm not concerned about Harden. I think he'll be fine as, we go more into the season and he gets used to the way these refs are now calling these games. So I think Harden's going to be okay. I'm not concerned about it. Here we go. Nick Claxton or Bruce Brown, who should start? To me, it's Bruce Brown. I'm not just saying that because, obviously the Nets played well yesterday with Bruce Brown in the starting lineup, but Nick Claxton just has not looked good at all as a starter. I mean, in the first game against the Bucks, he had a good stat line, but just watching the game with your eyes, you're like, this guy looks terrible, and he's always out of energy, always looks out of breath. I don't know what's going on with Claxton and his conditioning. That's a whole separate topic, but I feel like they were force feeding Claxton too much. They were trying to make him too much of the game plan when they shouldn't be. Now, as I said in the preseason video I did about the Nets, I was talking about how I'm fine with Claxton starting because they have Joe Harris and James Harden in the starting lineup, and those two guys are not known for their defense, and Claxton is. But Nick Claxton has been such a negative offensively so far that I just feel like it's not worth starting him. And Bruce Brown brings an element to the Nets that Nick Claxton doesn't. Bruce Brown's the type of guy that he fills in the most random spaces on the floor. Like, he'll go right into the paint about 5 feet away from the basket and does his floaters, and he'll be on the baseline and always cuts at the right time. Like, Bruce Brown's always in the right place at the right time, and Nick Claxton doesn't really have the offensive game that Bruce Brown has. Bruce Brown has the ability to make some three-pointers sometimes. He can stretch the floor, he can handle the ball, not at an excellent level, but he still could do it. Nick Claxton's more of just a guy who's going to hang around the paint and be a rim protector. He can guard on defense on the perimeter, but Bruce Brown just fits the starting lineup way better than Nick Claxton does. So hopefully Steve Nash learned a lesson or two, and that goes with Bruce Brown to start the rest of the year. So I don't know, maybe not the rest of the year, but at least has Bruce Brown to start here in the upcoming future. That's what I want to see as a Nets fan, and I hope we get it. Joe Harris. It sucks. I love Joe Harris, but he looks like playoff Joe. He looks like playoff Joe once again. And playoff Joe Harris last year, played well against the Celtics in that 5-game series. Well, the Nets won in 5, I should say. It was a 7-game series. They won in 5. And then, of course, in the Bucks series, he played well the first 2 games in the Bucks series. Then everything went to hell once they got to Milwaukee in Game 3, and Joe Harris looked like, one of the worst players in the NBA. And I'm not saying he has been that so far this year, but he has not been good. Like, I saw a chart today that was like basically charting offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency. And you have all these names in the middle. You have Kevin Durant up here, one of the best in the league. Then you have Joe Harris down here. He's like one of the worst in the league. So like, Joe Harris is just not doing enough right now to be worth that contract. And I was a person last year that, when Joe Harris was playing very well and shooting like 48% from 3, whatever the number was, I was like, yeah, that's why he's worth $70 million. But now you're watching him play, and it looks like a completely different player. And I'm sure a lot of it's mental. Like, I've watched enough Joe Harris over the past 5 years to know what type of player he is, and some of this has to be mental. There's no doubt in my mind about it. So, I think Joe Harris can find a way to regroup, hopefully. And I think as, obviously with this long regular season coming up, Joe Harris has been a durable player. He should be playing a lot of games. He right now is 3rd on the team in minutes per game. Maybe that should change. We'll talk about that on a different day. But Joe Harris is going to get the reps, and he shot 11 or 12 3-pointers last game on the game against the Wizards. He was like 3 for 12 or something. So on the season, I believe Joe Harris is a 34% three-point shooter. His defense has not been good so far. Every time he puts the ball on the floor, it seems like something's going wrong. His shot's getting blocked every time he's going for a layup, it feels like. He's had some nice finishes at the rim, but a lot of times he's getting blocked. So Joe Harris has not really, lived up to the contract so far this year. He did last year in the regular season and the first round of the playoffs, but so far this year, Joe Harris is not what we need him to be. And I'm not saying Joe Harris is the most important player on this team. He's not, but when Joe Harris is clicking and playing the way that we've known him to play, it's going to help this team a lot. And obviously having Patty Mills shoot at a very high 3-point percentage is going to help. And of course, Patty Mills is a better ball handler, but Joe Harris has a role on this team. And maybe in the offseason the Nets should have looked to trade him. Maybe they tried to and couldn't find anybody. I don't know. But just so far, it has not looked right for Joe Harris. So I do love the guy, and hopefully he finds a way to just get back to what he used to be, because right now it looks like it's affecting him mentally at this point, and the guy has no confidence. So I don't know. We'll find out. But Joe Harris, has to get better. Patty Mills, who I just talked about. Patty Mills has been off to such a tremendous start. He started his Nets career 10 for 10 from 3. You don't see that very often. A guy hitting his first 10 3-point attempts, whether it's Steph Curry or Reggie Miller or whoever. You don't see that too much. So Patty Mills has been hitting a lot of really clutch shots for this team, and it feels like every time the Nets need a 3-pointer, Patty Mills is there. He's been a good ball handler. We saw that one play he had yesterday, I think, against the Wizards where he did that pivot move and the guy almost fell and he hit a step back three. Like, he's a good ball handler for the most part, and Patty Mills is always there to hit big shots, and he's a veteran who's been there and done that. So I'm very glad the Nets have him right now. It's definitely very nice, especially with Kyrie Irving out right now. It's great to have Patty Mills, and once again, it's just an awesome signing, and so far it's working out. So happy he's here. For LaMarcus Aldridge, he is the mid-range assassin. He had the night off yesterday, so he did not play in that game. But in the Sixers game especially, LaMarcus Aldridge was the reason the Nets won that Sixers game. Yes, it was mostly Kevin Durant, who I think had a triple-double that game. But without LaMarcus Aldridge, I mean, the Nets probably don't win that game. It's kind of like Jeff Green in Game 5 last year. Of course, Kevin Durant dropped the 49 points and hit the big shots. But, Jeff Green also had like a 25-point game quietly. So, LaMarcus Aldridge was kind of the Jeff Green of the Game 2 against the Sixers. So LaMarcus Aldridge was shooting out of his mind. He was like 10 for 12 on the floor, hit a lot of big shots, 15 feet away from the basket. Like, he was great. He honestly was just helping the team a lot. He was even doing a pretty good job on Joel Embiid in the fourth quarter, and the Nets went on a 16-1 run, I believe, to close that game out, and LaMarcus Aldridge was a big reason why. Now, James Harden had an awesome pass to Aldridge to get an and one on a dunk attempt and kind of sealed the game. There was a big play by both of those guys. So, once again, it was mostly Kevin Durant, but LaMarcus Aldridge, when he's out there, is making a difference, and honestly, I know Aldridge at this point in his career at 36 years old is not going to play 35 minutes a night, but the Nets have to get him in there at important parts of the game. Like, get him in there in the fourth quarter, save him for the fourth quarter, maybe play Claxton more in the first half, and save Aldridge more for the second half, because Aldridge, being a veteran and a guy that can stretch the floor and defend some of the more natural centers like Joel Embiid, he does a better job on those guys than a Nick Claxton does. I mean, Blake Griffin can sometimes do a pretty good job, but there's also times where Blake Griffin gets exploited by those type of mismatches. So I'm fine with LaMarcus Aldridge closing out games. He can hit big shots, and he definitely holds his own on defense in the post. So big fan of Aldridge, and he got the night off last night with rest, so he'll be good, and hopefully he stays healthy the rest of this year. Hopefully we don't see the heart stuff pop up again. I pray to God that's not the case, because I think Aldridge actually has a pretty big role in this team, especially down the stretch in close games. Kevin Durant looks like an MVP candidate. I mean, what else can you say about this guy? He's led the Nets in scoring in every game so far this year. He's rebounding the ball, dishing out assists. He's playing awesome defense from what I've seen. Like, Kevin Durant is just out of this world, and I still fear every time he hits the ground that he's going to get hurt or something because of the way he's built, but as long as he's healthy, Kevin Durant's I think he's the best player in the NBA right now. Of course, other guys like Giannis are going to be up there, of course, but still, I think Kevin Durant, just what he does night in and night out, getting to watch this guy every game and see everything he does, it's unbelievable. So definitely admire watching that guy, and as long as he's healthy, we'll be good. Even last night, I think in the Wizards game, he went up for a slam on two guys. Basically, he took off and tried to dunk over two guys that hit the back of the rim, and he got fouled. But when he fell on that play, every time my heart drops when he falls, I'm like, just stay healthy, please. We need you. So I get nervous when KD hits the ground, but he's looked tremendous so far. And hopefully, knock on wood, his health is on his side the rest of the year. So DeAndre Bembry should play more, in my opinion. DeAndre Bembry so far, his minutes per game is probably not a lot, 7.7 minutes per game. Now, he played a lot more against the Wizards, and Bembry did what Bembry does. He was intercepting passes in the passing lane, anticipating the passing lanes, and starting fast breaks, and that's what Bembry does. He'll give you effort on defense, and he is really good at anticipating plays, and he's not going to give you much offensively, but he can finish around the rim. He's a good athlete, sneaky good athlete, so, I like Bembry. I hope he plays more, and whether he has to take minutes from Joe Harris or Javon Carter, it's so be it. I think Bembry should probably see 12 to 15 minutes a night, not 7. I'm not saying Bembry has to play 30 minutes a night, but he should get around 12 to 15, in my opinion. He should play more. He's enough of an impact on defense, and when the Nets had that lineup of Javon Carter and Bembry, they were doing really well defensively. I noticed that for sure. So those guys, give max effort on defense. Even watching this game now, I had the Knicks and the Sixers on in front of me. The defensive intensity those guys put out, especially the Sixers, is unbelievable. If the Nets played defense to that level and had that intensity, they'd be an unbeatable team, in my opinion. But there's a lot of veterans here and guys that are not known for their defense, so unfortunately that's probably not going to be the case. But having a guy like Bembry and having guys like Javon Carter that can play really high intensity defense when they're out there is definitely important. So Kyrie Irving, the news update for him. Nothing really has come out from Kyrie recently, but there have been some protests going on outside of Barclays Center before Nets games. And honestly, like, you can think the way you want. The people I feel bad for is the people that work at Barclays. Like, they didn't sign up for this. Like, there's people literally trying to get into the stadium, and they have to put up barricades to keep these people out. I'm assuming those people are, I'm sure most of them are probably unvaccinated people that are standing behind Kyrie and want him to play. And by the way, someone said this on Twitter, and it makes sense in a way. I mean, I get it's not completely, apples to apples, but like, why is Bradley Beal allowed to play at Barclays and Kyrie Irving's not? Like, Bradley Beal, I don't think is vaccinated, and he's playing at Barclays, and Kyrie Irving's not. So I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I hate that it's like only two cities or two states are like, doing this mandate thing. I think if it should be for one team, it should be for every team. It's not fair. It's not, it's not Kyrie's fault he plays in Brooklyn. I don't know. I don't like that part of it, but I'm trying not to get too political, of course, every time I speak about this, but like, it's just, the whole situation sucks. And now that you have like people protesting before every game, every home game, I should say, it's going to just make more unnecessary and unwanted noise for this whole situation. Like, I'm sure that's not what Kyrie wants, by the way. I don't think Kyrie wants people out there trying to, run into Barclays Center and have barricades up to keep them out. Like, I don't think that's what his goal is, but like, it sucks that that's the situation, and it's definitely bringing a lot of unnecessary attention to a situation that doesn't have to be dealt with. Well, it does have to be dealt with, but I don't know. I just feel like it shouldn't be happening, but it is, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. Until this mandate's lifted or Kyrie Irving gets the shot, I don't see this stopping. So I guess, net security and the Barclays Center security has to put up with this garbage, but it is what it is. So, I mean, you can feel the way you want to about it. I just wish that the NBA had it set for every team. Like, once again, I don't think it's fair that Bradley Beal or other unvaccinated players can come into Barclays and play. Like, it's the same thing if Kyrie Irving was playing. So it doesn't make sense to me, but that's just the way I feel. Anyway, upcoming schedule, talk about some of the games coming up here for the Nets. It's a long homestand. They have like 7 games at home here in a row, I think. So they already played 2 at home. Then they have 4 more at home. So a 6-game homestand. They play the Miami Heat next. They play them on Wednesday, tomorrow night. Then they play Indiana. We'll see if Karis LeVert plays in that game. I don't think he's played yet this year. Has an injury, of course. I feel bad for Karis, but hopefully he plays. Speaking of former Nets, Jared Allen's been off to a tremendous start so far. I'm happy for Jared Allen. Sucks we had to trade him, of course, but he's been off to a great start, so happy for Jared and living up to that big contract so far. Then they play the Pistons at home on October 31st, Halloween, which I think is a Sunday, so they play them at 7:30. And then they play Atlanta at home. So the homestand is the Heat, the Pacers, the Pistons, and Atlanta. So, it's not the toughest schedule. I think the Nets could go 3-1 here. I'm hoping 2-2 at minimum. I do recognize this might be a slow start to the year. There's not a lot of continuity with this Nets team. A lot of new guys, of course. And, they just got to they got to just tread water here. They can't afford to have an awful start to the season. But if they can just hang around 500 and then have a big 8-2 stretch or something at some point, they'll be fine. So as long as the Nets are hanging around 500, I'm okay. I'm content. I'm not going to freak out and overreact because, at the end of the day, I think this team's going to be fine. So I'm not worried about them really. But, hopefully on this homestand, they go, 500. So far, they're 1-1. So total, they have 6 games at home. If they can find a way to go at least 3-3, I'll be satisfied. I'm hoping for 4-2. If not better, that'd be great. But hopefully 4-2, but 3-3, I'm pretty content with, honestly. So their schedule coming up is not that difficult. They don't play a really, really tough team. I mean, Miami's a tough team, but they don't play a very hard team until Golden State on November 16th. So we're talking 3 weeks away here. So they got some winnable games coming up here. So hopefully they can kind of get their groove going here, and hopefully the offense and the defense can finally gel together. The Nets defense finally looked pretty good on Sunday. Monday. They look good on Monday. There was a point in the game where the Wizards couldn't buy a basket. Now, part of it was bad shooting on their part, but still, the Nets were just noticeably better on defense. So if they can keep that up and plus, keep their offense going, they'll be fine. Honestly, I think, it's fair to question Steve Nash at some points based on the rotations and whatnot. But in terms of talent, I think the Nets will find it at some point, and it's not really a concern to me. So I think they'll be all right, and I'm hoping that by the time this homestand's over, they'll be maybe a couple games over 500 500, maybe one game over 500, or at worst 500 in general. So we'll see. 2-2 once again, not the best start, but I think they'll be all right. So we'll see what happens here. I'll probably do a video after the homestand's over. I'll try to do like every 4 or 5 games. So after the next 4 games, I'll do another Nets update. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you guys next time.